can we make sense of what just happened as we look forward to that? Joining me on the panel right now, Dr. Alex Awiti is back with us, Director of the East African Institute, and Nerima Wako, Executive Director of the Siasa Place. Professor James Ole Kiyiapi, who ran for president last time, is still with us. Daisy Amdany, women rights activist, and Miguna, who is running for governor in the great county of Nairobi. I want to get your immediate reactions to the debate we just saw between these three people. Nerima, you go first.
Well, this is the first time we've had a debate where each one of them was a professor, very educated. For me, because I'm passionate about young people, I wanted to hear what they had to offer for youth.
And one of the issues was the youth agenda.
Yes.
Did they handle it well?
A little bit, kind of, sort of. I believe, like Ekuru talked about having a parliament where a third of the representation will be youth, and also I think it's an issue to have young people involved in policy making processes. That's something that's important. We talk about job creation all the time, but I don't think we understand that Kenya produces 1 million young people looking for employment every year. So it should be not the last agenda of the debate, but the first agenda, because I think it's a serious issue.
Okay. Dr. Awiti, what are your impressions of this first debate?
Well, I'm not terribly impressed. I had some passionate appeals. They showed up. There was some effort. They talked
Three
about
showed up. Three did not show up.
Three showed up.
Joe Nyaga, Mohamed Abdul Badida, Cyrus Jirongo were no-show.
It's better than last time. They talked about the manifestos. They expressed frustration just like everybody else. So this was like a wine fest. They're just whining around. But I did not see preparedness. I did not see anything that would convince me that they have capacity to govern this country. They're very long on the whining and complaining, but very short on the specifics about how they would deal with things. You know, to provide as a definitive analogy to the problem of corruption, this Mbuzi thing is atrocious. You know, it's a very simplistic way to talk about a very complex social problem, a socio-political economic governance problem. And I think
Are you saying that
it betrays a lack of preparedness. They were just not ready. They're not ready to compete at this level.
we're looking, tunatafuta mbuzi na wale ambao waliiba mbuzi. That sticks with Kenyans, and the fact that it was delivered in Swahili means even more people can relate with it.
So what? So what? You've told us that you're looking for the good from the people who stole the good, and then what happens?
Miguna, what are your impressions of the debate?
Well, I have to say, Larry, that Abduda Deda.
Yes.
You see, I can't even pronounce his name because he was a no-show. Joseph Nyaga and Cyrus Jirongo have demonstrated that they shouldn't even have been cleared by the IEBC because they're not ready even to debate, leave alone to assume the highest office in the land. So these guys shouldn't get any votes as far as I'm concerned. Secondly, Dr. Kaluyu is the greatest disappointment during this debate.
Why?
Because the man spoke a lot but said absolutely nothing. The man is ambiguous, general, and empty. He called himself a punda, a dog, and a man with a sling, and could not decide which one defines him.
He said pundas should support other pundas.
There is no real tangible plan the man unveiled, and in fact, I believe it is a great disappointment and a throwback from Kariara last week. In fact, Kariara should have been the presidential candidate, and Kaluyu could have been the deputy, because Kariara was clear, Kariara was precise, Kariara was confident. This man was a bubble, really a man about nothing. He was completely clueless. The second disappointment was Professor Wainaina. This issue, I agree with Dr. Awiti. Corruption is not about a goat. To say that corruption is a goat is really not to even understand the depth of the problem, the gravity of the problem.
He talked about an unholy trinity of tribalism, impunity, and corruption, and he promised to slay it.
He didn't say how he was going to slay it, and the examples he gave on how he thought he would slay it just did not sound as...
Okay.
They were not concrete, they were not thought out.
All right.
Dr. Ekuru Aukot performed better than them. But again, he glossed over a lot of issues. But
All
he
right.
was much, much better than them.
Daisy, your first impressions of the first debate?
Well, my first impression is this is why the debates are valuable, because we really get a glimpse into the candidates who have been promising Kenyans a better future. And from the three candidates, I want to agree with Awiti that what we've seen is a lack of preparedness. In fact, I think other than Dr. Ekuru, who showed that at least he's got some kind of, plan, the rest were just giving us sound bites without any concrete material. But one of the things that I note with concern is that they are so centered on their manifestos and not so much the constitution and the rule of law in Kenya, because when Dr. Ekuru was talking about a benevolent dictator, and especially being one of, the secretary to the Constitution of Kenya Commission, the COE, the
Yes,
Committee of
Committee of
Experts, that he doesn't see the value in institutions, building those institutions and following through on the rule of law, but rather a heavy-handed approach to leadership.
His argument for a benevolent dictatorship is that his exact quote is, Kagame's Rwanda does not condone bribery, and
Yes,
therefore it works.
that's
for
fine,
them.
but because it is leadership, but also institutions at work. The rule of law, penalize it, use the institutions that are available. You don't need to be a dictator. They should not be, democracy and anti-corruption should not be mutually exclusive. It should be part of our democracy. Wainaina is talking about envisioning a new Kenya. That is what the Constitution of Kenya does. It actually envisions a different narrative, a more inclusive one. So to tell us that it is your manifesto that envisions a new Kenya, clearly they have not interacted with the Constitution of Kenya itself. And I didn't hear anything about enforcing leadership standards, the standards of leadership and integrity. But by and large, for me, I think Ekuru has performed better than, the
So you two
candidates.
agree on Ekuru having performed
Yes,
better than the other two
in
candidates?
terms of some concrete, direction.
Professor
We'll have
Kiyiapi,
to
you...
talk specifically about.
We'll come back to that.
Yeah,
Professor Kiyiapi, you have
I'm-
been on that stage. What did you think?
I think the first thing I have to say is that, I must congratulate them for showing up to honor the country. But this narrative that we always present, that we are the alternative, these guys did not demonstrate that they understand what is going on in Kenya. There was no real depth in anything. And I expected them to dig into the system, because you cannot fix a system that you don't know. You cannot say, I'm new, I'm the new guy, I'm the new kid on the block, I'm going to fix everything, education, corruption. But you don't tell us in the first place what is actually wrong with corruption. Why are those who are in the system unable to sort out the issue? So for me, that was a frustration, that there was no specific area where they had sufficient knowledge of what is happening, and therefore what needs to change.
Professor Wainaina, for instance, even had his research done to the point of referring to an article that Musalia Mudavadi wrote in the Standard back in 10th August 2016, talking about the political class in Court and Jubilee then suffer from gangsterism. So he was talking about those that are now running and offering alternatives have also called their now partners different colorful names.
In fact, Yvonne Okwara
Yes.
challenged him that you are saying they said. What do you say? And let me give you an example. The issue of corruption. All of them basically said the same thing. But you are not going to solve corruption in Kenya by saying, I'm going to give leadership. Everybody has been saying that. Or we are going to make sure we enforce the rule of law. Everybody has been saying that. But if you are really looking for a practical solution to corruption in Kenya, you need three things, and I have been reflecting on it. Number
Yes.
one, the president needs to call everybody to order, including himself. Calling to order means you're telling people, we are going to be serious about this matter. And how are you going to be serious? You do the second thing,
What is the second thing?
that you must ensure everybody is audited before they take office, and they are willing to be audited.
We used to have
And the
declarations
third-
of wealth, public wealth
No,
declarations,
that
but
was
they were
still a
never
requirement
that was
of law.
self-declaration.
Yes.
We want
submit to an audit.
of what it is you have, and we audit it every other year.
And how did you make it?
How did you acquire
How
it?
did you make-
Not just what
Okay.
you had, but how you
how
came
did you-
about it.
And the third thing?
And the third thing is that corruption itself, no, I actually, let me think about that again, because I have lost that point.
But that thing has disappeared in the wind.
No, but I'm going to tell you about it as we just discussed.
Fair enough. I want to, they too felt that Dr. Aukot represented himself best. I didn't get your analysis overall.
Well, so I read his manifesto.
Yes.
And I think it's an atrocious, it's one of the most glamorous displays of an inability to understand how government functions. He talks about eliminating VAT, imposing a 3% sales tax on goods and services. He's lowering the minimum taxable wage. He's increasing the minimum taxable wage to 30,000 shillings. So in a sense, if you look at his fiscal plan, he's defunding government. And yet he's got a slew of social programs that he wants to fund, including free education, waiving tuition across the education level, from primary to
So his social
secondary.
programs cannot be financed by his plan in the manifesto?
He doesn't have the money. He's defunding the government that he expects to pay for these things.
Okay.
So I think that, in my view, that just displays lack of thoughtfulness in terms of how he's going to craft his administration. And that, to me, basically dismantles every plan that he puts on the table.
So who represented himself best?
Because he can't pay for it. None of them. The other guy, so my characterization of them is as follows. There is a guy who's an autocrat. He does not believe in the institutions of this country.
Right.
He actually says he will institute an international commission to deal with corruption. The other guy says he's the sheriff. The other guy says he's the gold thief hunter. No, so how do you run a country by these guys? What have they been doing for the last 6 months preparing for this job? Nothing.
Okay. Professor Kiyiapi, the point is back.
It's a very important point.
Yes, sir.
You don't allow people in public service to do business with government. In fact, if you have a company or you have whatever business, one of the things you must declare is that for the time that you are in office, you will not do any business whatsoever with government, and even at all, because you have to choose between two.
So public servants must be barred from doing business with government.
And I have to therefore debunk that Ndegwa's report that said that you can be in public service and at the same time you have 10 companies.
Okay.
That's where the problem is.
Who did best, do you think, Nerima?
Well, I think that Professor Wainaina talked about inclusion most of the times, but I also felt that Dr. Kaluyu was a bit out of touch.
Elusive.
Somehow, yes. Somehow he lost us and then he came back. But then what I want to say that I agreed with him was the fact that he talked about corruption not just being financial, because a lot of young people suffer this. Just walking in town, a friend of mine yesterday was harassed by the police.
Right.
There's that corruption. So do we talk about police reform, which was not even done, better salaries for them? What I was surprised was not talked about was public wages. As soon as we just saw SRC has reduced their wages, but that's not enough. It's still too high, I believe so. So I think if there are people who are serious about leading the country better, we have to talk about public wastage and accountability.
Before we go back to the panel, I want to just read some of your comments real quick, because hashtag DebatesKE is where you've been chiming in on your thoughts on the debate. This was, I think, looking forward to the next debate, the 8 p.m. debate moderated by Linus Kaikai and Joe Ageo, featuring President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga. Akoko Felix, how do you expect the president to attend the debate? He cannot risk any humiliation by a common mwananchi.
I think that just betrays the lack of appreciation of what the presidency is. The presidency is not just the highest office in the land. The president is a servant of the people.
Okay.
He represents the people. Is the embodiment of Kenya and Kenyans, and must feel obligated to account to Kenyans for the billions or now trillions of shillings that they have given him to preside over and to be able to deliver services with.
Okay.
So he can't say that the president would be humiliated in a debate. If you are not prepared for a debate, you are not prepared to lead. It's as simple as that.
Okay, so a few more comments real quick, because there were so many of them on hashtag DebatesKE. Mushemi Monjoria, if you can't face your fellow competitors and debate, how can you face challenges facing Kenyans? Big question to those who have not attended. In this first debate, Joe Nyaga, Mohamed Abdul Badida, and Cyrus Jirongo, I want to This is Marie Gloria. With all due respect, I think Dr. Kaluyu is overwhelmed. He's not answering the question. Instead, he's giving us his history abroad. Lynn Ngugi says, the moment you realize Dr. Ekuru Aukot makes such a great presidential candidate and you wonder why we dwell on Raila and Uhuru. Wangoi Keely says, Dr. Kaluyu is an animated debater. Dr. Aukot has the advantage of being familiar, and Professor Wainaina thinks we're primitive. Gadara says, these folks sound like they want to replace... sound like those they want to replace. So far, zero specific policies on ending corruption. All they have is, trust me. Mboya Laurent says, the trio should just form a coalition and face the two horses. They present similar issues.
Yes.
That is the sense somebody got from watching these three. And Ruth Mutegi says, these three candidates keep referring to each other's answers as good example. If they agree so much, why not join forces? So somebody else also said that. And finally, Eli Kurgat, ask questions on real issues, unemployment, importing toothpicks, entrepreneurship. So talking about the questions that were being asked and the topics that were getting covered right here.